All righty. Welcome. I am Heather Pierce Campbell, the legal website warrior. I'm an attorney and legal coach based here in Seattle, Washington, serving information entrepreneurs throughout the US and around the world. Welcome to another episode of Guts, Grit, and Great Business. We are super happy to have you here today and very excited to welcome our new guest, Tim Jones. Welcome, Tim.
Hey, Heather. Thanks for having me.
It's so good to see you again. And Tim, by the way, is known as that B Corp bloke. So stick around. You are going to learn, and I will too, some fun things about the B Corp process, situation, who it's for, and Tim's the guy to connect with on that. So, Tim, I think you and I, did we get mutually introduced? I'm trying to think how we originally crossed paths.
I think it was Nicole Jansen.
Oh, was she the one that?
I'm pretty sure it was Nicole. Yeah.
Oh, fun. I couldn't remember if I had introduced you to her when you raised her name.
No, I think it was, I'm pretty sure it was Nicole.
The other way.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Well, Nicole and I swap regular guests, especially if they're good ones, right? We will regularly share names. And if you're listening, by the way, go check out Nicole's podcast. She has a highly rated podcast called Leaders of Transformation. So, Tim, so great to have you here. I'm so glad that I inherited you from Nicole's podcast.
Well, I think we were booked in to do this last year, but you were sick, and so we bumped it, and then Nicole snuck in early. So you know,
I know,
such is life.
Such is life. I love that. Well, yeah, we did. I had to reschedule every podcast recording in December because I got that terrible cough. Like literally doctors were calling it, and I'm putting air quotes around it, the cough,
right?
Because there was no like known thing as far as like what virus it was, but it was making everybody have a really terrible, long extended cough. I could not have a conversation, let alone record a podcast without coughing my head off. So I'm still, my sternum is still recovering. I feel like an old person, that like broke bones because of the cough. I don't know what I did, but my sternum was very unhappy about it. So anyways, I can speak now without coughing, happy, but really glad to have you here. Let's get you introduced for folks that have not met Tim Jones, that B Corp bloke, before now. So Tim is the CEO, founder, and B consultant at Grow Good, a global consulting firm that specializes in helping businesses go B Corp and beyond. To date, he has helped hundreds of companies from around the world successfully navigate the B Corp impact assessment and is working with new businesses every week to take them through the process. As well as guiding clients to gain their B Corp certification, he delivers inspirational, motivational, memorable, and impactful consulting, training, and coaching to individuals and organizations. He has been described as a hybrid of the brains of Russell Brand, the energy of Tony Robbins, and the humor of Greg Davies, who is a UK comedian and host of Taskmaster. That's a high bar to live up to, Mr. Tim Jones.
No pressure. No pressure.
No pressure.
Go big or go home. Come on.
That's it. Well, welcome. I'm super happy to have you here today.
Thanks for having me. Great to, like I say, great to finally meet you. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Well, I get a lot of questions about the B Corporation process, and it's really interesting. I know that even you and I were talking a little bit about when we first connected, the requirements, how you help your clients navigate those. Even in my space, there's dialogue around even the current trend for businesses. And like, I would call it even bigger than a trend. I would say necessity for businesses to be socially aware, to have some impact orientation in their business, right?
Yeah, totally.
And I would say that applies whether you go B Corp or not. And, I think the concern that I've heard for some of these certifications is like, well, are you just putting lipstick on a pig? Is it a way to like greenwash a company that should have had this stuff built in already, right? What's your answer to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, every company has a social impact, full stop.
Yes.
You employ people, you serve people. There is a human, in every step of the value chain, and you impact communities and the planet. So whether you're consciously thinking of it or not, you're still impacting that. So that is business, full stop. So I think that's
I
just worth.
love that. I want people to pause and really soak that in. Your business has social impact, full stop, right? And it's about whether you really are taking ownership of that and doing
Totally.
something intentionally with it.
Well, I mean, I'm a real history geek. I studied medieval history at university, and
Ah,
when you think back, you know, there are names. People have names like Fletcher, means you used to make arrows. Hooper means you used to be the barrel maker. Shoemaker, well, you were the shoemaker. So we used to literally name ourselves and to a degree, therefore, our business based on the service that we provided to our community. So it's like it's that ingrained historically, but we've kind of lost sight of
mm.
that maybe. And
Oh,
so
yeah, that's a really interesting point. Like we literally used to name
literally,
ourselves after our work, right?
yeah. And there was a sense of, you know, craftswomanship about, you know, I want to deliver a product that's good because I'm gonna have to see this person every day for the next 30 years of my life. And if I make a
Yeah.
bad pair of shoes, I'm not going to get business. And if I'm doing it in a way that's polluting the little village that we're in, well, I mean, okay, medieval times, pollution in inverted commas, yeah, I
Right,
mean, there
but
was some bad,
causing
but
some
if,
harm or
yeah,
using up a resource or
yeah,
whatever, right?
it's that kind of tragedy of the commons. If you were using
Mhm.
more than the community needed, you'd be run out of town. And so
Mm,
we you know, we've had that. That's been our baseline, but we've kind of lost sight of that because over the last, you know, 200 years, I guess, industrial revolution, it's been capitalize on the business, make as much money as possible. And it doesn't really matter. I don't have to, you know, there's no legal requirement for me to think about the externalities, to think about the impact I'm having. Because my job as a CEO is just to make more money this quarter than I did last quarter. And as long as I'm doing that, I'm sweet. And so that is why I think we are seeing this rise of interest in various certifications, and why, for me personally, like I admit, B Corp is not perfect. It is not the silver bullet. There are parts of the framework that I don't fully agree with, but I think it is the best framework we've got. That is the most
mm,
rigorous framework that is globally recognized. It covers social and environmental performance, and the key thing is it is independently verified. And
mm.
that for me is like the holy grail. There is no other certification that can claim to have all four of those aspects. And the big thing in terms of, yeah, you know, combating any claims of greenwashing is the certification process is independently audited.
Yeah.
So it's really, really hard. I mean, sure, like any system, ISO, like anything, you could fudge it, you could make fake claims, but the effort you'd have to put in to make the fake claim rather
Hmm.
than actually just doing it, you know. So yeah, any system is corruptible ultimately, but it's a very, very high bar. And any company that has achieved B Corp certification is clearly outperforming, you know, business as usual and the market
Competitors.
in general. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I think, I mean, a couple things come to mind. One, I think frameworks are really valuable and important, especially for people who want to do better and they just need to know, what does that look like? What are the parameters? What are the ways that we can look at this so that we can trend in the right direction? And not all companies, especially depending on size, have the budgets to do what could be done fully to the nth degree, right?
Totally. And you know, we always say to people, do the best that you can with what you've got. Like,
Yes.
so to become a B Corp, you need to score currently you need to score a minimum of 80 out of 200 on this assessment framework. And a lot of people go, well, that's not even half marks. You know, how easy is this thing then? Or so how, you know, how hard is it if it's only under half marks? But most companies on their first attempt, so the median score on first attempt is 50 out of 200. So to even
Mm,
sneak in inverted commas, with an 80 out of 200, you're significantly outperforming business as usual. But it's worth noting there is no 200-point B Corp. Like, no one has won B
yeah.
Corp. No one's kind of nailed this. So it's do what you can. And that's why we call our B Corp sort of coaching framework Be Better. Like, use the B Corp
Mm,
framework to become a better company and do what you can with the resource that you've got, because it's that classic, you know, you can't fill from an empty vessel.
yeah.
If you go all in on your social or environmental impacts, which then means you're unprofitable, well, that's not
You're
sustainable.
right. That's
Yeah,
right. No, and hopefully we are able to grow in a way that allows us to become more sustainable, right? Like you build that into your model, if you haven't from the start. But I do like that phrase, be better, right? The goal is always to do better than we've been doing in the past and to keep that as our target. And I think that that like the score parameters, 80 out of 200, what that also tells me as somebody who enjoys looking at numbers, is that there are multiple pathways for achieving that. Like not everyone looks the same as they go through that process, right?
Totally. Yeah. And that's how it's historically been. However, spoiler alert, it is looking likely that the framework is updating next year, where there will need to
Oh.
be a minimum basic requirement. So currently there's 5 sections that your business is assessed against. So it looks at your governance, your workers, your community, your environmental, and then your customer impact. It's now looking likely it's moving to 9 topics instead of those 5. And like I say, at the minute, you can score like really highly on workers and environment, and then be doing not so well under community, governance, and customers, and you can still get the 80. But yeah, it's looking likely it's going to move to this minimum requirement, which I'm still not. You know, the more I've looked into it, I think, yeah, okay, it's not as I thought it was going to be quite unachievable for a lot of those sort of small to medium sized businesses. But actually, the more I look into it, I don't think it's going to be that big a step up from what the current requirements are. But it is going to make people focus on kind of everything. And I
Yes,
think
a
for
more
us,
holistic application of that
yeah,
process and that, yeah, those standards.
yeah. And I
Well,
think
and
whereas
that,
historically most companies we would say, look, just get B Corp certified year 1 and do it by doing what you can with what you've got.
yeah.
Now it's going to be a case of, okay, well, maybe you won't become a B Corp so quickly, and you're going to have to take time to get your ducks in a row, maybe over a year, so that you then can look to certify. So I think it's just going to change the pace
approach,
of the change and the approach slightly. But
yeah.
yeah,
Well, it sounds like, I mean, even going to that model of looking at 9 factors that are being evaluated or 9 areas, though, if people are doing it right, they're building a better business along the way anyways,
totally.
right? Does that feel true to you?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And the the data, the evidence is overwhelming that B Corps outperform across the board. And so for
Mm.
me, it really is a slam dunk argument as to why you should be considering B Corp. There was an insights report that was issued late 2023. So they did a review of the literature on B Corp performance, financial performance of B Corps compared to business as usual. Between 2019 and 2021, B Corps were more likely to grow their revenue and their worker base. So B Corps business outperformed in terms of financial metrics. B Corps were, I think it was 95% of B Corps survived the pandemic, compared to 80% of non-B Corps of comparable size and scale. And they did an analysis of 18 studies or financial literature reviews. And in 16 out of the 18, they showed that the cost of B Corp certification was either cost neutral or provided a positive return on investment. And only 2 out of the 18 showed that there were potentially some short-term costs involved, which more than likely attributed to sort of legacy companies who had to put investment in transition to do that good.
Yeah.
But the data is there that, but on average, a B Corp is 1.5 times more likely to be a zero waste company compared to a non-B Corp. I think it's 2.2 times more likely to be assessing their environmental impact. So we know, because B Lab curates its own impact report every year. So they get all the data from all the B Corps, 8,000 plus companies around the world. So they know what they're doing in terms of all those 5 key areas. But they also measure their financial performance and their employee growth. So we've got really, really solid data. That there's also really good data from the UK B Corp community. I think 24% was the average turnover growth rate for a UK B Corp in 2020 compared to 3% in the market. So for me, it's a slam dunk argument. If you just care about making money, actually, you should look at this social and environmental do-goodery. And if you clearly care about doing good and you want to make sure you're not being, you're not greenwashing, or you're not doing it as authentically, or you're not actually maximizing the good that you could do, well, that's a great framework to put yourself against and get benchmarked. So come at me, give me your counter arguments. I'm willing to go.
Right. No, that's great. And one of my questions was going to be, is it about the fact that more consumers are aware of this certification and are actually looking to support companies that are certified, like a B Corp certification? I know there's also like benefit corporations, and in Washington State, it's actually called Public Benefit Corporation.
Yep.
But or is it the fact that those companies are just more transparent? Because I think it's harder and harder to greenwash when you have employees and social media and all of these other mechanisms that provide exposure into your business, any kind of advertising campaign. And like people there's enough information out there these days. I think it's pretty hard to pull one over across the
Totally,
board on public, right?
totally.
So I think
Yep,
that it's just a harder thing to achieve greenwashing these days.
totally. And yeah, the consumer is more and more aware and can see through. I'm a reform salesperson, so I like to pick on accounting teams and marketing teams. So to all the crayon users in the marketing team, people are increasingly seeing through your beautiful drawings of, oh, look at like, let's put the word green in the title and put a green background. Boom, sales will go up.
Mhm.
People are seeing through that. There's a brand of potato chips here in New Zealand called Wakachangi chips, and on their packet they put made with 100% free range potatoes. I mean, it's a tongue in cheek. It's like a whole
Like a
thing.
teasing,
Yeah, it's like
yes.
a comedy thing, but it's like, well, that's a claim you could make, and there's no framework to actually monitor that against. So they can make that claim, and you sort of go, well, that's a great. I use that as a great example of a marketing-led claim. Well, yeah, I mean, how is a potato not free range?
Not free range,
Like,
I know. Oh my goodness. Well, and I
but
do love companies that incorporate humor into their
100%.
advertising, right?
But I mean, yeah, beyond the customer, we're seeing pressure from four main groups. So
Mhm.
employees, increasingly employees want to know that their employer has some greater purpose and they're making some meaningful societal impact. The younger generations
Yes.
coming through really, really care about this. We've had a conversation with a company based in Australia, and the CEO basically he opened the meeting by sort of saying, "Look, I'm a pretty guy in his sort of 60s. He's like, look, I'm a pretty old, wealthy white dude. I basically like playing golf with other wealthy old white dudes. I don't really believe in any of this stuff, but I recognize I have to for my business to be relevant for the next generation of employees that come through." So, like that. Customers, we've already mentioned, we're seeing increasing supply chain pressure. So the really like the mega big companies and even large-ish companies, if
Mhm.
they are exporting or operating in Europe or anything along those lines, there is now mandated requirement for reporting on social and environmental impact for companies of certain sizes in Australia, in Europe, even in New Zealand. Like, this is coming. So if you are in the supply chain of a large
Yeah.
company, they are increasingly going, "Oh, hi Heather. Yeah, you provided some legal advice to one of our team like 6 months ago. I just need to know what your social and environmental impact is, because I need to report your impact as part of my
Mhm.
supply chain." So we're seeing increase, and we've got live examples. We had a New Zealand company we're hopefully about to start working with. They're selling into the US market. Their US distributor rang them in the new year and said, "Hey, sorry, we're going to have to drop you because you're not a B Corp. We've gone with a different brand that is a B Corp. But if you go and get B Corp certification, you're back in the mix." And
Mm.
we've had 2 or 3 companies where distributors have said to them, you need to go and get a certification because our retailers and the end customer are now wanting to know. So that is
Yeah.
definitely a thing. And the other big push factor is the investment community, increasing
Mhm.
interest from local banks, and even national banks around, because they're coming under increasing pressure as to central banks who give them their money are increasingly going, "Hey, you can't be lending money to people where there's labor issue, labor violations, or if there's been environmental, anything legally against them environmentally or what have you." So they're really tightening up who and what they're lending against. But also we're seeing the rise of green lending. And so, again, a recent example, we've got a client who they're not even B Corp certified yet, but they had a conversation with their bank. And in that conversation, they said, "Hey, we're about to submit for B Corp certification." And they said, "Oh my gosh, that's so amazing. We think you're our first client who's done B Corp. We're going to drop 3% off your loan rate." So they're not even a B Corp yet. We heard
Wow.
another company who, in a similar boat, once they were certified, they reckon in the first 3 months they got 30K back ROI, 26K from their bank dropping their loan rate, and they reckon they got about 5 or 6K of free PR in the local and national media, based on them being one of the first in their industry to be a B Corp.
That's
So
amazing. I mean, those
so
are,
much.
yeah, those are win-wins, especially for those small to medium-sized businesses, right? That need those boosts. And especially, the ones who deserve to be competitive in the marketplace.
Totally, totally.
Yeah.
And in some sectors, this is actually becoming table stakes. So
Yeah.
if you're in the fast moving consumer goods sector, so health and beauty, food and beverage, if you're not a B Corp in the pretty near future, people are going to be giving you the side eye and going like, really? But you
Mm,
guys claim all natural, holistically made, da 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 da. Your 5 other competitors are all B Corp. What's the story? Like, what are you hiding? So yeah,
yeah. Well, and that's just it. I think when you talk about like disadvantages of the information age and how easily we can become overwhelmed, overconsume, you know what I mean? There's a lot of like, I think mental health impacts of the technology and information age that we're in. And the benefits are like this, the transparency, the access to information that actually changes behavior for the better. Like
totally.
we've got to keep those trends going. And yeah, I mean, the reporting on the pressure from those 4 different groups is really insightful, because I think people often think definitely about the consumer industry. They think about younger generations who just are more savvy and care
Yep.
a lot more about these things, including in their purchasing decisions, in their decisions about who they're going to go work for, right? It makes a big difference. But also, I love actually hearing about the older generations who are like, you know what, we got to get with the program. It needs to happen, right? You
Yep.
don't always love that they're so late to the game, but like, glad to have you, glad to see you
Yep.
here.
Totally.
And then the supply chain, like the insights into that are huge, because you think about that awareness as, because I think some small providers think like, oh, we just don't have eyeballs on us in the same way that big businesses do. But
It's coming.
it's coming. There's multiple ways that it
Yep.
still matters for you.
Yep.
So on that point of thinking about the small, even small to medium, but especially the small businesses, it's largely who I serve. It's most
Yep.
often who I'm talking to. Talk to us about like budget process. What does it take? Is it
Yep.
feasible? Like at what point are you telling people like go grow your business a bit and come back to us?
Yeah. So the vast majority of B Corps globally are small to medium businesses. There are a
Mm,
handful of large multinationals. So at the really big end of town, you've got like Danone North America, Danone Europe, Danone Asia Pacific. Unilever Australia, New Zealand is a B Corp,
mhm,
but the rest of the Unilever world currently isn't. I believe they're kind of working on
mm.
that, but their Australia, New Zealand region, I think they just felt that was an easy
And
one that
this,
they could sort of start with. So yeah, there's a few really big companies, but not that many. The vast majority are small to medium businesses. On the small end, really, really small, like micro business, like maybe 1 or 2 co-founders,
yep,
startup mode,
yep,
the costs typically just don't make sense. So
yeah.
your entry level certification fee for like under a $1 or $2 million business, you're looking at around about $2,000 to $3,000 a year. And at that sort of
Mhm.
micro business, sometimes it's just like, just not quite yet. However, with them, we would totally advise that you go and have a look at the impact assessment. So to go and have a look at the impact assessment is free. You can go,
Yep.
if you just Google B Corp impact assessment, we'll get the proper link. And it's like a really weird link that
Oh,
I can't
okay.
remember.
Yeah. So
Um,
folks, listen up. We'll share that link for you.
yeah. So if you just Google B Corp impact assessment, you can go and create an account and you can have a go at the assessment yourself. So you can play around with it. You can see all the questions. So if you're in that kind of micro startup phase, we totally recommend go and look at the assessment and start building your business around it. So if you don't have any
Mm.
employees yet, but you think by the end of maybe a year or 2 years, you might have your first 3 to 5 employees, well, just think about, well, what are some ways we could be constructing contracts and how would we want to engage our employees? What kind of benefits do we want to offer people so that we know we can build that in to our, financial forecasts and all the rest of it. So you build the business of the future, whilst you're starting it. But yeah, beyond that, smaller businesses that are maybe doing, anything from perhaps a mil, 2 mil of revenue plus, like I say, depending on the market and the industry, and if you're in the consumer goods sector, the money that you're going to spend on the certification, like I will eat my hat if you don't get an ROI back on that just
Yeah.
from customers. If you run the process properly, you'll get the staff engagement. You're gonna literally. I mean, in the last month, I've had 4 people email me saying, "Hey, have you got any jobs?" And I'm like a small consulting company at the bottom of the
Wow.
universe. It's anecdotally, we definitely see that B Corps get people reaching out to them saying, "Hey, I just love what you're doing. I love how you're doing it. I love why you're doing it. Can I come and work for you?" So
Mhm.
for those small to medium businesses, like you will typically get, you'll retain the good talent and you'll have people wanting to, knocking on your door, wanting to come and work for you. So yeah, so that small to medium, definitely worth looking at.
Mm.
Cost is going to be your certification fees, and we can give you a link to work out. It's on a sliding scale based on
Oh,
revenue,
got
so it
it.
goes up
Okay.
in sort of small chunks based on your revenue. Um, Typically, the thing that for most small to medium businesses is just capacity. Large companies, the challenge is we've got lots of people, we've got lots of information, but I've got to try and get hold of someone in the regional office in New York, and I don't actually who that person is, and they're in a meeting every time I call, and the time zone's rubbish. Like, so large companies typically struggle just to find the person who actually holds the keys to the information
Yeah.
that they need to collect. Small companies typically struggle because normally it's either the CEO founder who's going to run the project, or if they're big enough, they might give it to their ops manager, their finance, or their marketing manager, who they're not a sustainability professional and they're doing this as an addition to their job. And so time and knowledge are the two big factors that stop small businesses. And that's really why we exist. So we're all about simplifying and fast tracking that journey by basically providing you with the knowledge, the consulting, the expert information that you need to get through the assessment. And we also basically lock you in a room to make you do it, which is because most people get to the end of the week and they go, oh yeah, I'm head of marketing, I've got a million things I need to do, I'm in charge of the rebrand, I've got to keep on track of all the socials, and I've got to go and open up that assessment that I don't really understand and try and hack my way through it. And
Right. Yeah.
always, it'll always get pushed because it's the thing that you're just least confident doing.
Totally. Ugh. I know. At least maybe you lock them in a room with a lot of coffee, right?
Yeah, coffee, snacks, whatever, beer, whatever wine, whatever needs to be done
Right.
to,
Throw it
yeah.
at them. No, I get it. Um, well, I love it. I mean, this feels like such good, powerful information. Even that piece about like for folks that are aiming towards this as a goal, but you're still building out team, growing your revenue, like go dig into that assessment and begin to design your business around those parameters, right? Like what a more powerful way to build your business anyways. Um, I'd be curious to know how this became your thing. Talk to me a little bit about your journey and what your background was in
Yeah.
and where you came from.
So there's nothing like a good early midlife crisis to get you on the career path that you perhaps should have been on. So I'm originally from the UK, went to a very good school in inverted commas. My parents paid money. I wore a uniform. I went to school on Saturday. Gives you some sort of indication as the type of school that I went to. And the path that was set for me from school was you will go and become a member of the professional services or the military, and you will go to university. I remember talking to, I should remember, looking back, where well, for a start, it was called the careers master, not like the teacher. It's like I say, it kind of gives you an impression of the school, Hogwarts, basically. And I remember them sort of saying, oh, so which universities are you applying for? There was no like, do you want to go to university? Do you want to go and get a trade? Do you want to go and start your own business? It was like, which university? So went to university, did medieval history because it was the one which had the least number of hours of lectures a week. And I just thought, well, that's quite a smart way to choose your degree program. Did that. I really wanted to get into the British Army. That was like the thing that I wanted to do, but I failed the officer selection for the British Army. So I ended up in a bit of a tailspin, went and lived in Australia for a year, came back from Australia, met a Kiwi girl in the UK, moved out to New Zealand, seems to be how most people end up in New Zealand. They meet a Kiwi in the UK or the US or something, end up over here. And I literally fell into the world of medical device sales. So for the first year, when I got back from Australia, I did a year in the UK working for Johnson & Johnson, selling hips and knees. And then when I moved to New Zealand, I ended up working for a company selling spinal instruments and implants. So basically my job was to go stand in the corner of the OR every day, advising the surgeon on how best to use our product. It's a real thing. And like I said, I've got a degree in medieval history, and I'm guiding an orthopedic or neurosurgeon on how best to place a little widget to fix someone's back.
Right? That feels scary, like from
Yeah.
multiple fronts. Scary for you, scary for the patient.
Scary for the patient. Yeah. But it was, it was a really cool job. And they train you up, like the training that I received on biomechanics, physiology, basically almost like medicine 101. Like you have to be competent and confident. If anyone knows an orthopedic surgeon or a neurosurgeon, like they are not dumb people, and you cannot pull the wool over their eyes. So you have to be able to know that when you and literally you're advising them in a surgery. So if you don't know what you're doing, you're literally putting someone's life at risk. So a really, really cool job. But as I was going through that career, there was a couple of things. I mean, I was in my early 20s. You know, life's good. They pay you a ton of money. I got to go to a ski conference in Davos in Switzerland every December, flying business class from New Zealand. I got to go to Sun Valley, Idaho every February because we took some surgeons over to a conference there. Like, you know, free
Cool
healthcare,
spots,
phone, car. You know, everything that a young guy in his 20s is like just a, you know, ball in it. But yeah, the first thing that popped up was, so one of the companies I worked for was based in Philadelphia, and I think it was like their VP or their president of sales went to jail. And you sort of go, okay, well, what's all this about? And when you're working in the company, you know, they obviously massage the PR around, you know, what's gone on. Oh, you know, look, it's kind of like it's a case of medical misadventure. You know, like we've been really unlucky. You know, it's just a slap on the wrist. Da 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 da. And then you sort of reflect on it a bit later and you go, well, now hang on a minute. The company knowingly launched a product too soon into the market because they wanted to, you know, like any industry, if you launch first, you get market share, you get the revenue and the profitability. So they launched this product knowingly too soon, having sort of grandfathered claused it through the FDA. So there's a really harrowing but well worth watching documentary. It kind of comes often on Netflix called The Bleeding Edge, which is a really good summary of all the corruption in the medical device industry. So anyway, they launched this product. The first 4 or 6 patients who received this procedure all died on the operating table. And the kicker was the surgeon doing the procedure was a shareholder in the company. And so the email trail going through the company was the surgeon sort of saying, look, I'm happy to keep going. I think we can, you know, we can work out what's going wrong over the next few surgeries. The CEO of the company, who was like the 17th richest man in Europe at the time, Hans-Jörg Wyss, he was kind of going, yeah, this is good. Like, we need to keep going. We've got to think of market share. And so allegedly, what we heard was like the VP or the president of sales, he was like the last man standing because he sent the email to the other one saying, so are we agreed we're going to keep going? And so he was the guy holding the smoking gun. He got the jail time. But the surgeon, nothing. 17th richest man in Europe. Like, is he going to be prosecuted? Like, probably not. So yeah, I walked away from that thinking, well, okay, you know, they've kind of sold it as, you know, you can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. You know, we've got to advance technology. And you kind of go, well, okay, yeah, there is that. But you did also kind of creep around some of the FDA regulations to get this product in. So, okay. But again, you kind of go, well, I wasn't involved in it. It's not me. Anyway, about 2 years after that, every major medical device company was subpoenaed by the US Department of Justice. Because there was and this is a real case of, if you're running a business, just be nice to your staff, because it was a travel clerk in their travel booking team who was the whistleblower. So basically, she took the evidence from this company showing how she was paying for family members of surgeons to go to conference venues. You know, could we extend our stay and have 2 weeks on the Champs-Elysees whilst we're in this conference in France? Oh, I hear there's a conference in the Bahamas in May. You know, could I get a flat there for a month afterwards? Yeah. Even rumors of surgeons being just basically the car keys to a Porsche, just, you know, in the mailbox, you know, once a year. Thanks for your service. Anyway, so again, the companies all just came out and said, yeah, but it's a level playing field because we're all doing it. So, you know, there's no harm, no foul. So there was that, and then there was a third incidence of some corruption that I discovered here in New Zealand, and that was all sitting in the back of my mind. But the trigger moment was where I live here in Christchurch in the South Island of New Zealand. We had a massive series of earthquakes over 2010, 2011. And then in 2012, my wife and I had our daughter. And over that sort of 2-year of time, I basically went through what's called a subconscious awakening. So if you have a near-death experience, earthquakes, if you have you know, the birth of a child in your life, the only other thing I didn't have at that time was the death of someone significant or close to me, because those are the 3 big events that can lead to people having this moment of like, what the actual am I doing with my life? Yep. So I had that moment, and yeah, it took me about a year or so to sort of really process it. But I just remember standing in this one OR in a hospital in Auckland, and the surgeon was just being particularly belligerent and nasty to the whole operating team because things weren't going well. And I'm sitting there going, I know how much you earn. I know how much you're stealing from the system. I know how unethical you are. I'm just, and yet I'm having to just to keep my mouth shut here. And I walked home after that at lunchtime. And we were living about a K away or about a mile away from the hospital. I said, well, I'm done. I was about to say something, and I can't, you know, you just can't do that. So yeah, I left that industry. I'm really disillusioned. you know, if the one industry in the world that should be just about fixing people is the medical industry, but actually it is one of the worst when it comes to profiteering, and, you know, causing patient, you know, bad patient outcomes in pursuit of profit. And we've seen that, you know, with obviously like the Sackler family, you know, all the Oxycontin stuff that's going on over your side of the planet. Yeah, it's just awful. So I left that industry and ended up interviewing for about 80 different jobs in different companies, just anything. And I ended up then working for a firm of property consultants. So helping, you know, in the rebuild of Christchurch, I thought, wow, this could be really meaningful, like getting involved, working out, you know, how do we get better buildings? But again, it was really apparent that the people in the rebuild, all they wanted was cheap, quick buildings that were really profitable. Like, we don't care if they're, you know, environmentally friendly, don't care about access for people with wheelchairs or, you know, any other disabilities. So again, got really disillusioned. And I guess over this period between 2010 and 2014, I went on a massive journey of self-discovery. Like, what is the meaning of life? What am I supposed to be doing? And on that journey, I came across this thing called B Corp in about, it would have been 2014. And I thought, well, I bet that there won't be one in New Zealand. Turns out there was one, and there was one down the road from me here in Christchurch. So I emailed a guy, Steve Arder, who was CEO and founder of a company called Eagle Protect. And I was like, hey, I've just stumbled across this B Corp thing. Can I come and have a chat? And he's like, sure, come around for a, you know, cup of tea. We booked in, I think, like a 45-minute meeting. I left his office 4 hours later, just, you know, head exploded. Okay, there is a group of people. At the time, there was maybe about 1,000 B Corps globally. But it's like, okay, I might be mad. I might think that this whole profit at all costs is really stupid. But everyone I'm talking to in business is just like, well, that's just what you do. Like, why are you worried about it? It's really good. Just get on the gravy train. But yeah, to find Steve, like, he really was like the mentor on the hero's journey for me of there is a different way. And so, yeah, he introduced me to the B Corp movement. And then, yeah, sort of by late 2015, I'd been made redundant from it. I moved out of the property company and ended up working for a company doing training and coaching and consulting, because I kind of knew that that was really what I want to get into. And yeah, late 2015 got made redundant. And I just thought, well, I've been telling everyone else that they should be a B Corp. Maybe I should just pony up and do my own one. So by mid 2016, certified as B Corp number 5 in New Zealand. And since then, just been talking to anyone that will listen to me about B Corp and why it might be something worth looking into.
Oh my gosh. Well, your journey, I mean, I mean, there's so much in it that I relate to in different ways, right? That whole awakening, going through loss, tragedy. I mean, it's some of these things that lead to our most important work in life. And kudos to you to like recognize the writing on the wall in some of the industries that you were in and just decide like, that's not for me. Because we need more people deciding like this path over here is not for me. And I definitely think people are waking up to it. Like, I think it's much more in the mainstream now that people are talking about the fact that business just has to be done differently. But I still think there's a lot of people that don't know the how. Like, how do I do it differently? What does the path look like? Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's why they need to connect with somebody like you who has walked it. I mean, congratulations to you for being B Corp number 5 in New Zealand. That's awesome. That has to feel fun to say.
A long old time ago now. Yeah. It's like,
right.
Whew. Yeah. I mean, we're a 3 times certified B Corp ourselves. So, you know, we've been around the block. We've seen pretty much everything you can see in the world of B Corp. So.
And okay, and on that, so 3 times certified B Corp, is it a process you go through multiple times? Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So let's say if you certified as a B Corp now in 2024 at the time of recording, you would recertify 3 years time in 2027. So you pay your certification fee annually to maintain your status, but you recertify every 3 years. Yeah.
Got it. So you're on this interval
3 times.
Yeah. So it's like re-upping your like continuing legal education.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So, and the idea is not every company goes up in score each time. Like we went up and then went down because there were just some changes to my business. And to be honest, my business is like the classic builder's house on the street. I'm really great at advising other people on how to do B Corp, but yeah, not so good when it comes to your own business. But yeah, it can be a real journey of up and down. But the idea behind it is you then have this framework where you can kind of go, okay, well, we're doing this. Let's maintain this. Let's build on it over the next 3 years so that we can get a slightly better score next time. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that framework, I mean, it's just so important for people to have a map, you know, and the fact that it's an evolving process. I think Anyways, I think that feels good because especially I think folks that are drawn to this are going to be drawn to having some way to measure growth and measure how they're doing. And I think transparency and having outside eyeballs on your business matters. I think it matters a lot.
Totally.
Um,
And there's a real sort of community feel as well around like
mm,
holding each other accountable. It's typically relatively easy to connect with other B Corps like in your sector or, you know, even outside of industry groups, but you kind of pass that initial sniff test of, okay, well, we know there's some common values that underpin how we operate and how we think about business. It's not to say that you're guaranteed the deal. Like we've had some clients who go, well, I've pitched my services to this company and they're a B Corp and they're not interested. It's like, well, they might just not want your services. Your sales approach might have been average. So it's not a given that just because someone's a B Corp, they're going to use you. But it's certainly,
right.
you know, to get a conversation going with other B Corps, it's typically pretty easy because you're like, yeah, I want to support you because I get, you know, we share the same sort of ideals.
Totally. No, that's huge. Who have been, and you don't have to name names, but like within industries or types of business, like who are your favorite people to work with?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question because people often sort of say, oh, you know, which industry, you know, is the most
Mm-hmm.
common one for doing B Corp. It's really, for us, it's not industry specific. For me, it's
Yeah.
more about the mindset, the intent, and the desire of the company and the people in it. So we have
Mm-hmm.
helped a farm with their B Corp. We have helped law firms. We've helped consulting firms, marketing companies, product companies, food and beverage companies. Like we will work with any kind of industry because it's interesting for me to get my head around it. Particularly like I say, the first farm, there's only a handful of farms in the world that are B Corp certified. So it was a learning experience as much for me as it was for the company. Because I'm like, I've never seen this question before. Because that's worth also just mentioning. There is no one assessment. There's about 70 different assessments you take. And that will vary based on your geographic location, the industry sector that you're in. So there's 5 sectors. There's agriculture and growing, manufacturing, service with minor impact, service with major impact, which would be like travel, tourism type companies, and then wholesale retail. And then how many employees you have. So if you're 1,000+ employee in the retail sector, you're going to have different questions from a farm that has 20 employees.
Got
So,
it. Makes sense. Yep.
so yeah, we just want to work with people that want to do it and
Mm.
are keen and hungry to be better, and we can help them all day long.
I love it. Well, and I love, it sounds like you have some interest and like enjoyment out of the variety anyways, like going
Oh,
through that
massively.
process and
Yeah, yeah,
walking through it and learning more about it yourself. I mean,
yeah,
that feels fun. I think not to be doing the same thing every day.
totally. Yeah, I
Yeah,
need that variety. Yeah.
totally. Yeah, I agree. Well, it's so, I mean, I love hearing about the process and digging into some of these details because, I think it's important for people to know that it's accessible, and especially for those small companies that are growing into the range where it is a fit, understanding just how accessible it can be. A couple
Yeah.
grand a year and some ongoing effort where somebody is kind of overseeing and managing the process doesn't make it sound so burdensome, you
No,
know?
100%.
Yes.
100%. And a lot of the companies we help, you know, that they are almost shocked that they've made it across the
Right?
80. And I'm like, I knew all day long you were going to do this. And so
Yeah.
there is it's good in some ways. There has been a bit of mystique around B Corp, like, oh my gosh, it's so hard. Like, oh, you're a B Corp. Wow, like, one day maybe I'll be able to do this.
Mhm.
Like I say, if you've got the mindset, the intent, and the desire that you want to be a better company,
Mm,
we can show you there's like some really quick wins that a company can implement to get themselves to that threshold. You know, year one, our advice to people is, look, just get across the line. If you sneak in with an 80.1, it does not matter. You get to put that B Corp logo just as well as Patagonia with their 150 or whatever they get. It's like you're still a B Corp. But then use the framework. You've got 3 years, the clock's ticking, then work out budget, timelines, ownership. And the real key the first time around is to bake in as many of the KPIs that you kind of sort of reveal on the journey, is to just make them into business as usual, spread that load across the company so that not one
ah,
person's owning it. It's like, well, hey, marketing team, actually, you now need to take ownership of ethical marketing. So we want to report from you, once a month on, have you had any complaints about our marketing being, disingenuous, or, if it's 0, cool. Well, it's a really easy thing to measure, but we just need to keep on top of it. So
yeah.
yeah, we're really big on that employee engagement side. So we do a kickoff session, get all the team. Like if you've got 1,000 employees, we want to get all 1,000 employees on the call, or over 3 calls if we need to. Get the team fired up about what this B Corp thing is, because you know every business needs customers, employees, supply chain, and investors. And in each of those sectors, the individuals all care about something socially, environmentally. I love that program when the CEO goes back to the shop floor and he's astounded that the people who he's paying no money to struggle to feed themselves and their kids. It's like, oh, who knew? Shock. Get to know your team, bring your team on the journey, because they will have ideas that they are sitting on that closes the purpose loop about them being really passionate about the social fabric of the community in which you're operating in. Get them to run the community side of it. Get them to bring the ideas around how you can do more social impact, how you can do more outreach programs, or whatever it is. That will light up their life, the energy that they will then bring to the rest of their work and the team. It's like, I call it the self-sourcing chocolate cake of goodness. It's like a chocolate fondant that just keeps spilling out more chocolate, and there's just more chocolate for everyone, and there's more spoons, and it's just amazing. We have a great old time. So it's like it's such a multifaceted tool. It's like, get the independent verification, get a certification, tick, that's gonna, but use it as a tool on the purpose journey to bring the team, bring that engagement. And then if you tell that story successfully to your other stakeholders, your customers, like I say, if you don't get an ROI back from that, you've done it wrong.
Yeah. Well, and for people that are intimidated by the process or thinking like we're too small to do it, like it's so great that you walk people through this step by step and hold their hands and here's how it's done. And you've seen how it's done for years now. It sounds like you were really on the early edge of that. So that feels fun and also very supportive. So for folks that are listening and that are thinking, oh my gosh, I need to check this out. I need to learn more about this process. I'm interested in connecting with Tim. Talk to us about where you are online. Do you like for people to connect with you, and where is that?
No, hate people connecting with me.
Some people, no, listen, some people, I've had a couple of guests that are like, no, don't,
no, I don't.
Like, go to my website and opt in. I'm not on social. You're not going to find me there. I actually just interviewed a guy on Friday that was that way. I ended my day with him doing a recording, and he is the anti-social media guy. And he's like, nope.
That's okay. That's reasonable.
It's great. But I love people who are so clear on their business boundaries and their personal boundaries, right? But I always ask, do you like for people to connect?
Yeah, if you can't find me on the internet's probably broken, is my go-to theory. So LinkedIn is the best place to go find me. That's where I'm most active. You can check out our website, which is growgood.co or growgood.co. You can book a call with me there if you want to have a chat. There's a link, to book a call. Send me an email, tim@growgood.co. We've got links on our website. We've got an ebook, which is like it's called To Be or Not to Be, the What, Why, and How of B Corp. We'll get a link so that you don't have to sign up to be spammed by me. We'll get you a link for that, Heather.
Although I encourage them to be spammed by you also, cool. Right? So I support that. You're a business. No, and we're joking, folks. Of course, Tim is not going to send you spam.
We don't send spam. We send you highly curated, interesting thoughts on B Corp.
That's right.
But we'll also get a link to that insights report that I mentioned that shows the financial case for B Corp. So yeah, we'll get a bunch of that. But yeah, just check out our website. There's a bunch of info on there. If you're interested, just book a call with us. There's a little link on the website. Book a 30-minute discovery call. Totally happy. Like if you don't want to work with me, I'm just so passionate about growing this movement. For the last 8 years, I will go to the opening of an envelope if I thought the envelope might be interested in B Corp. Like, I just want to help you connect to the movement. If you end up working with us, that'd be amazing. We'd love to. We have a ton of fun. We bring the energy. Make going through what is quite a dry, boring online assessment. We try and make it as fun and humorous as possible. So we will have a ton of fun helping you. Like I say, beyond anything, we just want to connect your business into this world and see you thrive. Like the B Corp is such a small part of that journey. We will be able to connect you with people that will just help you. Like we just want to see your business get to the next level, become the business that the world needs your business to be right now, so that you can have a great time, you can be profitable, look after people and planet. And at the end of your time, when you sell your business or you walk away from it, you go, that was a bloody good ride. And I feel pretty complete that I didn't destroy the planet and my local community at the same time, but I've done okay. Like, I think that's kind of what we're all looking for in business ultimately. It's got to know at the end of our day, like, that was a good ride. And I'm proud to say
we did good.
That was my business.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's exciting. I'm already thinking of some folks that I can connect you to. But first, if you're listening, I want you to pop over to the show notes page. You can always find those at legalwebsitewarrior.com/podcast. Look for Tim Jones' episode. And Tim will link to your website. We'll certainly link to LinkedIn. I'm a big LinkedIn fan myself, and also the links to the locations on your website to connect with you. I'd love for people to set up calls and start exploring this process. Check out that insights report, anything else you want us to see there. But I so appreciate your time, and you've just shared a wealth of information. I feel like, anybody who listens is going to have so much more knowledge about this process that they probably did not have before. And I think it makes it feel so much more accessible. So I love that. And that is the goal of this podcast, is that people listen and then they go take a step in the right direction to support their life, support their business, right? And this is a biggie. I think having that map is huge. So I super appreciate you. I'm so looking forward to the folks that will get to hear this and pop over and connect. You've given us so much already to think about, but what final tip, quote, feedback, joke, heck, I don't care what it is. What do you want to leave us with today?
I'm a massive skier. I love the two things I love more. There's nothing I love more in the world other than my family, obviously, than B Corp and skiing. And for those who are big skiers, you might know Warren Miller and the Warren Miller movies. And as he always said at the end of his movies, if you don't do it this year, you'll be 1 year older when you do. And for me, that's the same with B Corp. If you don't start thinking about doing it now, you'll be a day, a week, a month, a year older, and you'll have missed all the opportunities. So
I love that. Start now, folks. It's never too late to get on the path. Tim, I appreciate you. I so look forward to being in touch, and I will be sending some folks your way.
Appreciate it. And everything that you do. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you.